The NBA trade deadline is a month away, so let's rank what each team, in my opinion, think. Nope, that's weird. The NBA trade deadline is a month away, so here's what I expect each team to do. Rather than just saying they're going to be buyers or sellers, let's be a little more specific with it. So the categories are stay put / minimal moves. So I think these are more, the horizontal things, your role players rather than going for that big swing there. Get a floor raiser. Kind of similar to go big, but just rather than go for like the big name, I think Alex Caruso is the perfect example of a guy who's, not the big swing, but he's going to raise your floor immensely. Go big, pretty self-explanatory. You got guys like Pascal Siakam, Zach LaVine, DeJounte Murray. Those are the kind of names that are being floated around as the big fish for the trade deadline. So should they go after one of those three or maybe someone else that we don't know about? Who knows? Consolidate. This one's really for, teams that have a lot of assets. You look at the Oklahoma City Thunder with how many picks they have, the immense amount of vets, as well as like you're kind of on this two timeline thing somewhat with the Hornets. That's a little bit of a spoiler, but just teams that have some assets that they could flip into from 2 to 3 solid things to one really good thing, I think. And then last one, of course, as always, blow it up. What are the teams that all hope is lost, abandon ship, time to start anew? So let's get right into it with the team that I personally cheer for, the Milwaukee Bucks. For me, I think they need to get a floor raiser, not in the sense of the roster's not good enough, but I think it's been very apparent that on the defensive end, pretty cheeks. The lack of attention to detail, the lack of transition, just everything on the offense is really stupendous. But when it comes to that other level that's so important on the other side of the ball, the Bucks by all measures have failed. Which is crazy to think of, because when we think about how the Bucks have been in this era of being Giannis Antetokounmpo's team, they've always been very, very, very defensive minded. You think about the era of Mike Budenholzer, it was like a guaranteed top 5 unit every year. And now it's like the complete opposite, to where they're, I believe, the second offense in the league, and they're still trying to scratch like bottom 20, hopefully get to the 15th as my personal belief. But, I think of there's a lot of guys that could be on the market for that. One, for my opinion, not necessarily a trade piece or a trade target, but when you look at the buyout market, PJ Tucker, he's not really getting any burn in Los Angeles with the Clippers. And, who knows? Maybe he comes back home to where he was able to get his ring. So not to go too much into that, but definitely Milwaukee needs some more help on the defensive end. Brooklyn Nets, I'm going right here. I mean, I love Mikal Bridges as much as the next guy. Go Gadget, I think is his nickname. He's really shown that he can be more than a 3-and-D wing. But when you think about it, every NBA player is like that. Before even Torrey Craig was just spotting up in the corner and defending, I'm very sure that he was out there getting buckets, whether it was in high school, college, whatever it may be. So when you think about the Nets team and how they're built, with the supposed fact that they don't really like Nicholas Claxton, they prefer Daron Sharp in terms of like how much money you're paying Cameron Johnson. You have Dorian Finney-Smith, just a lot of, I think, peripheral players. And to say Mikal Bridges is your guy, all the power to him for giving him that confidence. He's definitely shown that he can drive the bus at times, but for him to be your bona fide hop on my back, let's go to the finals or whatever type of dude, I don't know if he's really in that mold. So I think you got a lot of assets here. Dorian Finney-Smith, I think, is one where, I believe a team could overpay for him, given that he has a very good reputation as a 3-and-D guy, able to dive for loose balls, just do a lot of the dirty things that a lot of players don't want to do. Dorian Finney-Smith is perfect for that. As well as, if it is true, Nicholas Claxton is a premier center in this league. I think it's just a mix of, there's no true point guard on that team. Spencer Dinwiddie's, I think, more of a tweener. And when you look at a guy like Nicholas Claxton, he was very much able to thrive with James Harden, who has transitioned into more of a pure point guard, still with that scoring aspect, but he led the league in assists multiple times, so he was still like that. And Nicholas Claxton just doesn't have that anymore. Now, that's not to say that he's been completely useless, because he's still definitely shown his defensive chops. But when I'm looking at a team where if you're looking for a floor raiser, Nicholas Claxton could be it. And if you're the Brooklyn Nets, I think you need to hit a bit of a soft restart. Mikal Bridges, if you want to keep him as a core piece of your next team that you're envisioning, all the power to you. But when we think about how many first round picks were offered for him last year, I do also think that there is a possibility of there's a deal that's too good to pass up. Granted, there's also that rumor of that Memphis offered 4 first round picks, which, in any world you would probably take. So when it comes to Brooklyn, I think this team has really run its course since last year. And now we're just sort of seeing the fallout from that. The New York Knicks, they've already made a big move. So I think moving on, stay put, maybe make like a couple peripheral moves. But when you look at it, I'm really excited to see them next year. Mitchell Robinson is out for the season, but we know that he's a very premier defender. He's a premier rebounder, and they're really lacking that. You pair that with the fact you have one of the best point of attack defenders in OG Anunoby. That could be, I think, a really good defensive pairing. And I think to add any more pieces, I don't really know if that's really the cup of tea that I'm thinking for New York. I think you have a solid lineup where you have Jalen Brunson. I don't know if Quentin Grimes, but whoever's the starting 2, alongside obviously OG, Julius Randle, and Mitchell Robinson. I think that can make some noise for sure. Is it like a bona fide championship Eastern Conference Finals kind of team? Any given Sunday type of vibes with that. I think they have the ability to, but are they going to be able to keep up with a Boston Celtics that has all the firepower in the world, a Milwaukee Bucks that can quickly, get you out into trouble? There's a lot of teams that I think I still put a lot more faith into that, but New York, for by all intents and purposes, I think if we were to end, or if we look forward into the deadline from a month from now, I still think you could say that them getting OG Anunoby puts them in a good account. The Toronto Raptors. Now, obviously, prior to OG, you would probably have them somewhere like here, blow it up. But now I think they're more, into consolidating. That consolidation piece obviously being Pascal Siakam. We've all heard that, right before they were about to play Sacramento, they cut off trade talks, and it all began with with Sacramento not wanting to part ways with Keegan Murray. But, there's a whole bunch of suitors for Pascal. I think we were talking about it on the podcast earlier, but he's some guy I think has been, overlooked and honestly disrespected the past few years. We think about, the fact that Scotty's there. We were automatically thinking, oh, he's shown a lot of flashes. This could be our bus driver. But, Pascal's still shown that he's one of those guys. He can still be a solid, low end number 1, very, very, very high end number 2. And to think about the teams that he's being linked to, you have, for example, Sacramento. I think him playing alongside De'Aaron Fox and just Domantas Sabonis could be really good. You think about him going to Golden State. We all know how much of a dumpster fire that's looking like right now. So to get any sort of big time help would be a good thing. But Toronto, I think you're just set up to go into this new era. And when you think about how old Pascal is, being right at that 29 to 30-year-old range, he doesn't necessarily fit that timeline. So I think being able to give him the best chance to win now is the best thing for both parties here. The Utah Jazz, pretty self-explanatory. They're nowhere near even being a play-in team. I think Will Hardy is a very solid coach. You look at the pieces that you have. Keontae George, he looks like he could be your starting point guard for the next decade plus when he's been giving his time. Colin Sexton, that's still one of the only men to ever beat the Nets' big 3 fully healthy. And Taylor Hendricks is a guy who hasn't really gotten a lot of burn. The John Collins trade is really looking like a mess. And, there's not a clear sense of direction when it comes to Utah. Will Hardy is a very, you got to earn your keep type of coach. So I think that's why we're seeing that Keontae George hasn't been inserted back into the lineup when he came back healthy, because Colin Sexton's been playing very well. But I think you're hopefully able to parlay how good Sexton has been playing. And obviously, Lauri Markkanen's the big fish there, the big whale that, in my opinion, is probably the best piece out on the market in terms of being able to insert this player into your system seamlessly. He's definitely looking like the top guy. So as a result, Utah, I think they're very much in need of a hard reset. And it's not terrible because, like I said, you have Keontae George, who's a solid point guard, Walker Kessler, who's, serviceable for sure, but I think has much more room to improve. You have the two most important positions, in my opinion, to start there for your rebuild. So why not just fully blow it up and try to, recuperate some assets? The Houston Rockets. It's weird because beginning of the year, none of us really thought they'd be where they're at right now. Emeka Udoka has them balling, but when you look at their roster, you have Alperen Şengün, who's very much stepping into that top 5 type of center aura, really getting that baby Jokic comp validity. In addition to, Fred VanVleet's been hooping, but it's really suffered when you look at a guy like Jalen Green, who, in my opinion, could still be a premier scorer in this league. Just, it's the Fred VanVleet effect. What can you do about it? And that doesn't even begin to talk about a guy like Cam Whitmore. In my opinion, probably the biggest steal from this last draft. And he's getting minimal burn at best. He started, I think, to finally really somewhat be in the rotation. But when you just look at like the assets that they already have, we're not even beginning to talk about Amen Thompson, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith Jr., Dylan Brooks. There's a lot of talent here. And I think, this is all me just to say, stay put, let it grow. I don't think there's really much sense in making a big move anytime soon, but who am I saying? The New Orleans Pelicans. This is another team that's right. I don't even really know what to think about. It's been a lot of mid. We think about last year, or maybe 2 years ago, where they were at the top of the Western Conference for a good bit. Now, that was because their team was healthy. Zion Williamson, that was definitely when he was right back in that 27 a game type of mode. And now he's really been struggling to find that form. And the team as a whole has just been very, very mid. So in my opinion, you got to get a floor raiser. I think that primarily starts with either getting a real point guard. I love CJ. I'm a big Portland fan, but we know that his bread and butter is not being a facilitator. He's being the one being facilitated too. But that, in addition to a guy like Jonas Valanciunas, who in my opinion, I think is still a very solid center, to the point where you don't even have him closing in games. So I think there's some pieces to be moved around there, and as well as guys like Trey Murphy III that have earned their keep and deserve to be in a bigger role, to the point where I think, it is a mix between consolidating and getting a floor raiser. But for New Orleans, I think they just need a little bit more stability within that unit for sure. The Lakers, get a floor raiser. Now, I understand the need to want to get a Zach LaVine, but, I don't know if that's necessarily the best thing to do. We saw what happened the last time they chased after a name. There was a whole Russell Westbrook debacle. In my opinion, the Lakers were very, very wrong in how they handled that situation, and I would hate for that to be another thing here. Granted, I don't think it'd necessarily be the same, because we're talking about, a 28, 29-year-old Zach LaVine versus a 32, 33-year-old Russell Westbrook. That, including obviously, of course, they play different positions. So, in my opinion, the Los Angeles Lakers, they have all the personnel to be really good, but I think it's maybe just parlaying like a Taurean Prince, a Cam Reddish, or whoever you want to pair in there. Jalen Hood-Schifino is obviously a piece you could throw into trades. It's all about getting like another peripheral guy, I think, because your big three is obviously LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Austin Reeves. And now it's just about surrounding those guys with pieces to, put them in the biggest spot for success. Chicago Bulls, pretty obvious. It's without a doubt confirmed, or all but confirmed, that Zach LaVine's out. I would assume that Vooch and DeMar are also on their way out. And we're going into the Kobe White era. Minnesota Timberwolves, as of this moment, last time I checked, they were very much exposing the Orlando Magic in regards to their lack of size. And Minnesota is a team that I think has really taken the league by storm. You know, whether it's the fact that Anthony Edwards is finally, you know, not even really finally, but really stepping up into that superstar bus driver type of mold. We're finally seeing Rudy and Cat mesh well together. The Minnesota Timberwolves are completely rolling, and I don't see any reason to stop that. Portland, consolidate. This is mainly just to do with obviously the veteran they have on their team, Malcolm Brogdon. As a Milwaukee fan, it pains me to see him play some unmeaningful basketball. However, he has been hooping. He's been showing it off, and I think that if you're Portland, you're happy for that because you're able to, one, have a solid mentor to a guy like Scoot, who's finally starting to look like a serviceable NBA player. Anthony Simons is obviously some guy that you're hoping to be one of your, main core pieces. Shaedon Sharpe, of course. 3 solid guards. Shaedon maybe projecting more into that wing role. That if you have a guy like Malcolm Brogdon, who's been in a conference finals, who's been in NBA finals, can pour all of his knowledge into those guys. And I think to reward him by sending him to a contending team, more than serviceable. Now, which team would that actually be? I don't really know. But, I think consolidating him and, just overall letting your young guys ride is what I would do if I was Portland. Denver, pretty obvious. They're looking really good, looking like they could for sure go back to back. Pretty obvious there. Let's actually, you know what? Let's get all the stay put teams out the way. LA Clippers, obviously. Cleveland, this one's a little bit different, but in my opinion, I think, the only reason they've looked bad at times is because their team's not healthy. Evan Mobley's been out for an extended period of time, same with Darius Garland. Once you're able to get those pieces back, you get this team humming, there's no doubt in my mind that they could get back up to that aura or that playing level of being like a third in the East like they have been the past few years. Now, are they going to get to that this year? Tough to say, given how stacked the top of the East is when you look at a Milwaukee, a Boston, a Philly. Those 3, I think, are your solidified top 3. But for sure, Cleveland could fit into that 4th spot. But who knows? I think it just comes down to them getting healthy. Boston, same thing. These guys have been blitzing everyone. They should not have lost last time when it came to the Pacers, but, is what it is. Same thing here with the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't think you're really in the market or should be in the market to make a big swing. We've seen what that's happened to them before, and now we're here. And it's been a good thing, I think you never really think when a team loses a guy like James Harden that they look either the same or even damn near better. I think what James Harden's departure has done is, one, it's really propelled Maxey into having that high usage. And he even credits James with being the reason that he's been able to be in this form. So to have him pick his brains for the past couple of years and seeing that fruit yield dividends, big plus. Not only that, Joel Embiid is looking like more of a well-rounded player. I think you've seen him obviously dominate on the scoring end, how he can be on the defensive end, but he's kind of gone into his playmaking bag here and there. He's had a few triple doubles. Just overall, I think you're seeing Nick Nurse really create this system around Joel versus, whether it's Maxey or Harden that would pass the ball to Embiid and then he would just go to score. I think you're really seeing Joel show off more of his toolbox for sure. Now, the Thunder. It was tough because, as I talked about on my podcast with my friends, I don't think they should be in the market for a Lauri Markkanen. And when you have guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren. I think those are your solidified three like bucket getters when it comes down to it. You know, whether it's time's expiring or you're in a clutch situation, you have three guys that could go ISO by themselves. And not only that, you got guys like Isaiah Joe who can hit a corner three or just overall be a threat from the perimeter. Lou Dort can undoubtedly stretch it if he wants to, as well as being a solid defender. So for me, I think maybe getting a floor raiser, and that mainly being, as I alluded to earlier, a guy like Alex Caruso would do wonders. You know, they're already a top 10 defense. If you add a guy like Alex Caruso, who's not only a gritty defender, a solid perimeter defender, but again, we talk about these guys that help teams win championships. It's the ones that are able to do the dirty work, the hustle work, and Alex Caruso does all that and more. And I think the Oklahoma City Thunder really have all the pieces to propel themselves into contention. It's all about really shoring up the defenses, you know, shoring up the peripherals rather than trying to get the biggest gun, you know? All right, when it comes to Memphis, you know, it's a very disheartening thing to hear about Ja. I think we were all excited to see how he came back to the league and how it was like he didn't even miss a beat. First game, game winner, almost a damn near triple-double. Now he's out for the rest of the season, which, you know, if anything was just, I would assume that he maybe had an injury like that heading into coming back. I don't really want to assume too much. But overall, when you look at this Memphis team, when they come back next year, I think they can be a dangerous unit for sure. Desmond Bane's taking an uptick in playmaking. If you're able to have a guy like that be more of a two-way player on the offensive end, could do wonders for your squad. John Morant obviously showed that he's not lacking too much rust. Jaren Jackson Jr. is still a guy you want to see more out of. But, you know, I think all these times without Ja is really helpful in terms of letting guys like Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., Marcus Smart, Luke Kennard even, just letting guys like that get more confident in themselves, and to the point where when you come back, instead of being, you know, a little timid, they know that I'm relied on to do a little less than I was last year. So going back to my regular workload, pretty easy. And I think you just want this team to mesh together. To add another piece to it or subtract from it, you know, just increases the time it takes to really mesh together. And when you look at like what they need, I think you look to the draft. You got a guy like, his name's Donovan Clingan. I don't know. I'm Canadian, so it's hard to really keep up with all the draftees. I do my best, but you know, I think the problems that they have can be solved through the draft for sure. All right. Instead of all this boring mumbo jumbo of the peripheral guys, let's talk about the first team I think need to make a really big swing. Dallas. It sucks that you're never going to be bad enough to get a top lottery pick, but we've seen that that's not the only way to really increase the ceiling of your team. As it stands right now, you know, I think they're well equipped to be a first round exit. Even if that, because let me get it like this. Luka Doncic is undoubtedly one of the best players in this league right now. Kyrie Irving is undoubtedly one of the best ISO scorers overall that this league has ever seen. Outside of that, it's a lot of solid but not like incredibly good players. Derek Lively, I think, is a massive hit. He's somebody that you can see growing alongside Luka, you know, hopefully for the entirety of his career, damn near. And then not only that, you got a guy like Grant Williams, who's definitely been on a bit of a decline production-wise, but, you know, is still, I think, a very, very positive piece to have in a playoff series. I mean, I know all about that being a Bucks fan, but, you know, it's tough when you have guys like, you know, Derrick Jones Jr. that you're relying so heavily on. Not to like put him down or anything, because I think Derrick Jones Jr. has really showed out this season, but, you know, there's just not a lot of outside presence outside of your two big scorers. And, you know, in my opinion, I think you need at least three. Now, How Dallas does that, very complicated when you think about the lack of draft picks, uh, just the overall lack of, I think, the overall ability to not really outbid another team. Because when you think about it, if you're say you're going against OKC and you're going for Laurie, you can't really beat much more than all the draft picks that they have. You know, Josh Green is cool. He's a guy that I would personally keep, but there's just not a lot of assets to get a highly coveted player. But, you know, if there's a team that needs to, I think, make a humongous swing, Dallas is a team I definitely put there. Boom. The Spurs. I don't think they really need to do much more than just get Wemby a point guard. That's all I'm saying. Jeremy Sohan's cool, but it's tough. Seeing him have a guy that's 7'4", who's damn near a mismatch against any player in the league, and Wemby, and then Sohan just settles for a drive that leads to nothing. That's all I'll say there. All right, Golden State. I don't really want to harp on this too much because we've all been witness to the downfall, unfortunately. Shout out to my mother. But you got to do something. You got to do something to salvage the season. You got to do something to really show to your fans, to the media, to Stephen Curry especially, that you're still wanting to compete. You know, Stephen Curry is 35, 36. How many more years are we going to have being a 30-point scorer on 50, 40, 90? Unfortunately, not too many. So I think to not really buy in as much as you can, not really sell the house or whatever, is a disservice to a guy like him that's been so important to the league, especially your franchise. So, you know, whether it's Zach LaVine, Pascal Siakam, who knows? They just need to do something for sure. Detroit Pistons. Last time I checked, they won, had a 20-point lead against the Sacramento Kings, and 2, lost it. So, you know, we could say all the jokes we want about Detroit. At the end of the day, I think you just sell on guys like Bojan, Alec Burks if you can. Just, you know, try to really have it so that the team's solely focused on just developing their young talent. Boom, Sacramento. Speaking of Sacramento, I think they're at a point now where they're in that upper echelon. They're in that right outside the club kind of thing. But they're just, you know, a few dollars short, a few greased palms outside of being let in. Now, how do you get into that club? Take a big swing. We've all seen that they were in talks for Pascal Siakam. Zach LaVine is supposedly on the table. If there's one team I really want to see make a big splash, Sacramento's definitely up there. In my opinion, in my hopes and dreams, I hope it's Kyle Kuzma. You know, he's a guy who has that championship pedigree, who I think could provide the spark that they need, while also not costing them an arm and a leg as much as, say, a guy like Zach LaVine would with $200 million. Pascal, who's undoubtedly going to command a big max type of deal. Get Kyle Kuzma there. All right, when it comes to the Phoenix Suns, now, if there was like one standalone tier for them, I think it would just be to get a point guard. You know, you talked about on the podcast, the Blacktop podcast. They just need a table setter. They need a guy that can, you know, take the ball out of D-Book's hands when it comes to the playmaking duties. Because I think Devin Booker has been solid. He's shown that he can be a point guard, but you know, it's similar to. I'll put it like this. Let's say you got a Ferrari. The bells and whistles, everything's all good, but you're not maxing out that potential. You're driving the Ferrari as a daily driver. Has all the functionality, all the looks, all the aesthetics of a Ferrari, but you're not letting it loose like you should. And I think that's what we're looking at here with Devin Booker, because he can play make, but we know that Devin Booker's bread and butter when it comes to being as deadly as he can be, which he has been in the past, it comes out of having a guy like Chris Paul be able to get him in his spots, to be able to be the initiator and not just let D-Book dribble it up and then go from there. I think that's a big reason why we've seen Devin Booker's production drop off a bit. That and obviously being his playmaking duties. But I think you get a guy, the big name that I think everybody's thinking, which might be a little harder now with the fact that Tyrese Halliburton's out, but TJ McConnell on this team, I think that's a guy who, plays the game the right way, would fix that problem of not only just the playmaking, but I think he could be a leader on that team because, when you look at it, it's tough in Phoenix right now, to say the least. So I would say stay put, but the minimal move is really the thing that can put you over the top if you get a point guard. Next up, the Charlotte Hornets consolidate. Terry Rozier's hooping. You got Gordon Hayward, who's probably going to be a buyout candidate. I think they just need to really, throw in the towel. Terry Rozier, I think, is playing to a point where you've gone from maybe you can get 1 first-round pick to now maybe you can get a pick plus a solid prospect, maybe even 2 first-rounders. Who knows? But I think to have a guy like Terry Rozier, who's as good as he is, and to also be a team that's not nowhere near competing, plus the fact that you always have LaMelo Ball there, Nick Smith Jr. is, I think, a solid prospect. You'd be dumb to sit on this asset. So, trade him for what you can get. The Washington Wizards, I don't even know if they really deserve conversation, but yeah. Who would have thought that a team anchored by Jordan Poole could be as good as they've been? Damn near. I mean, in my opinion, I can't even say I'll say it like this. I thought they were going to be decent. I drank the Bradley Beal Kool-Aid thinking that, Jordan Poole, 6'3" shooting guard. Bradley Beal's a 6'3" shooting guard. Both are buckets. But Jordan Poole, I think, has shown that, it's not always greener on the other side. So I think, obviously, as I alluded to with Sacramento, Kyle Kuzma could be out there. Daniel Gafford's a guy I think could be playing a role on a playoff team. And yeah, that's all she wrote. You got solid guys like Bilal Coulibaly, Denny Avdia is a solid defender. But I think you just got to reset here. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Ooh, Miami, the Miami Heat. Man, there are a few guarantees in life. Number 1 is death. Number 2 is taxes. And number 3 is the fact that the Miami Heat will be a solid team. By all accounts and factors, by every measure imaginable, I think a lot of us outside of Miami fans really thought this team would take a step back from being the powerhouse that they've been, really take a step back from, being a top tier team. But Miami's done it. They're a solid team. They've got a lot of pieces to build with, to compete with, and now it's about putting it together. And I think, getting another couple wings, another solid guard, something along those lines would help them. But by all accounts, very solid season so far. All right, last few teams to get through. Let's start obviously with the order here. The Orlando Magic. Boom. Get yourself a floor raiser. Now, what do I mean by that? I think today I'm recording on January the 9th. They played the Minnesota Timberwolves and they got absolutely smashed. Or at least when I was watching before I decided to record. But Orlando is a team I think has severely exceeded any expectations we had for them. I think, everybody I think thought they'd be, Sort of similar to where the Charlotte Hornets had been at prior to LaMelo getting injured. Solid, could be in the play-in, but they were going to fall a little bit short. And obviously, they're playing like a team that belongs. They're playing like a team that is in the upper echelon of the NBA because they are. They have the ability to. Paulo is not even a damn near all-star. He's a bona fide all-star. He might as well be a superstar almost. Now, the big thing with them, though, is the size. I know that's crazy when you think they got guys like Jonathan Isaac, Paulo, Caleb Houston, Franz Wagner, Mo Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr., all guys that are above 6'9", but the size that they're really lacking is a true 5. Wendell Carter Jr., when he got drafted, I think was more of a 5 by situation. I think he projects much more as a 4. And sort of same thing with Goga. Now, Goga's been solid. I think prior to Wendell Carter Jr. getting back, and even now he's still in the lineup, he's shown that he's a serviceable NBA player. As a starter, I don't really know. Now, when it comes to pieces that are available, when it comes to Orlando, Clint Capella's out there, maybe take a swing at him. Daniel Gafford, I'm sure, is hopefully on the market. Maybe get him. He fits your timeline really well. I think you just need a real center to be there. And, that'll be another piece that projects you and propels you hopefully into the playoffs. We all know what's going to happen with the Atlanta Hawks. They're blowing it up. And in my opinion, I fully support it. I think everybody does. Because by all accounts, I think the Trae and DeJounte backcourt has been nothing but it's almost going to be like a fever dream. Once DeJounte moves on to his next team, maybe he's really good with them, and then think, man, can't believe he used to play with Trae Young. And I don't know if holding him back's the right word, but I think Trae has been put in a situation that very few could succeed in. Being very undersized in the NBA as a whole, and being a top echelon level player, and always not having enough to get over the hump. It's been a while almost since that Eastern Conference Finals run. And once you kind of step into that light, you're expected to ascend and surpass that light. And they've never been able to get to it. So, hard reset this team. And I think it's also your last chance before Trae potentially looks at, greener pastures. Being 25, this is I think the last chance they're going to have to be able to do this kind of reset without Trae really seriously considering if he wants to be around for it. Even now he could be. So, whatever Atlanta does, I just hope that they truly, truly build a team around Trae Young. Because I think they sort of haphazardly done that. I don't even haphazardly, if I said haphazardly. I don't think they've fully tried to build this team around Trae. There's been a few pieces that fit, but, still a few jagged around the edges. But you got Trae, you got Jalen Johnson. I think those are two very solid starting pieces. All right, last but not least, the Indiana Pacers. Pretty tough next couple of weeks for them, considering that they're down their heliocentric point guard. But I think the big thing for them is to get a nice, solid floor raiser. OG Anunoby on this team would have been a wonder. Would have been the perfect piece. He's obviously not on the market. When you look at what's available on the market, I don't know if there's really that kind of guy that they need. Because when it comes to Indiana, they don't need a guy like Zach LaVine who is going to give you 25 plus points on okay efficiency. Because they have guys that can do that, or they have guys who can make up for that deficit. What they really need is defenders. Miles Turner is one of the best shot blockers in the league. Bruce Brown is a Swiss Army knife. Outside of that, there's not too many solid defenders on the squad. And whether it's, looking for a guy who could be on the market. In my opinion, I just don't understand why they don't play Jarace Walker. He's a guy that fits that mold wholeheartedly. So whether it's giving him more minutes or again finding something on the market, Indiana I think is a team that's a couple moves away from, being in that similar aura Sacramento, where they're right outside the club, but they can't really get in. And with that, who knows if any of this really makes any sense? We'll see in the next month with the NBA trade deadline. Anyways, I'll see y'all next time.